Welcome everyone to SEO Office Hours. My name is Michael Chidzey. I'm an SEO here at Good Signals. And part of what we do, along with special guests, are these office hour sessions where people can jump in and ask their questions around their website and web search. By the way, nobody here is in the hot seat and we might not know all the answers, but multiple heads thinking about a problem should help. We have a bunch of questions submitted already, as you can see, but if there's anybody here live on the call that would like to ask any questions, just flag yourself in the chat functionality, which will be monitored. And also, we usually have a bunch of SEOs on the call, and feel free to share your perspectives. I think that's one of the best things about SEO Office Hours, is it's not just the speakers, but it's others sharing what they know. Every week with me today is Juliana Turnbull, also known as SEO Joe Blogs. Morning, Joe.
Hello, morning, Mike. Hello, it's good to be here today. Yes, as Mike mentioned, I'm Juliana Turnbull. I also run a remote digital consulting business called Turn Global. And actually, we help clients that want to expand their audience into different markets and go global. I used to move around a lot when I was younger and also as an adult. And now we've got offices in Barcelona and Brisbane, so well adverse to moving internationally and marketing internationally. I also run two events, Search London and Search Barcelona. We had our 13th birthday for Search London at the end of February, and we have our next Search Barcelona in May. Details to be confirmed. And if you are in Barcelona, it'd be good to see you there. I'm really happy today that we have two great speakers to share the stage with us. We have Stacey and Sandra. We have, first off, Stacey MacNaught. So Stacey is an SEO and content marketing consultant running her business from Manchester. She specializes in keyword strategy, content, and link acquisition. And she's actually going to be in SEO Vibes Poland. I believe that's a couple of months' time. And actually, in her free time, she also is an avid hiker. So the SEO Vibes in Poland is actually near a great mountain range called Tatra, and she'll be doing her hiking skills there. I will share Stacey's details in the chat. And also really pleased to have Sandra Schneck joining us today. Sandra actually started her online marketing back in 2018, helping clients in B2B and B2C. And for the last few years, she's been leading the SEO strategy at Decathlon in Germany. And this week, she is part of the WTS mentorship, the 6th cohort, and she was matched. She is a mentor, and she is based in Stuttgart, Germany. I will share Sandra's details in the chat. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We have an international SEO office hours, I believe. I think myself, I'm calling from Barcelona. Mike's calling in from London, Stacey from Manchester, and Sandra from Stuttgart. So thank you, Simon, Deepak, Hifaz, Numan, Neil, John, Isaac, and Mary, and Johnny S. for dialing in today. Please put in the chat where you're calling in from. And also, if you have any questions for the speakers, do write it in the chat. Back to you, Mike.
Great. Okay, let's crack on. So the first question is one that I brought back from, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th office hours, because I think, Stacey, I think this is the perfect question for you. And I'm also really intrigued because I remember you used to do, you probably still do, but I remember from talks, you used to do all these stat campaigns and so on to earn links. This question is, we miss Google consumer surveys for PR and link building statistics and stories. What other options are there for link building projects? There could be none.
Yeah, I went and looked at a lot. And I don't think the one thing that consumer surveys was great for was it was totally self-service. So you could just log in, set your question up. They had multiple territories. It was quick, easy, and pretty cost effective. And even outside of SEO, lots of my clients' teams would use it for just their own general market research. So I've never found anything quite as convenient since. But quicksurveys.com, it's more expensive, but is relatively quick. I tend to use a company called Censuswide, which have a really massive UK panel, but they've also got US. And they'll let you do the single question. It's not self-service. You do have an account manager. You got to go through the process. But equally, what Censuswide and OnePoll would do the same thing, and YouGov would do the same thing. What they do, and this is why I guess it can't be entirely self-service, is they follow a set of accreditations called SMR principles. So you submit your question and it goes through compliance first. And then compliance will come back to you and say, you can't ask that because it's leading, or you haven't given all the options and all that kind of stuff. And then you go back and forth for a bit. I sulk, throw my toys at my pram, then do it their way anyway. But ultimately then what you know you've got is data that is properly credible. It's a demographically representative survey. They've got the questions been asked in such a way that it's going to be accurate. The data's going to be as accurate as you can get it. And people taking part in the survey are paid to do. They want to answer the question. They're not just answering a question to make the ad go away so they can watch the YouTube video they're actually trying to get to. So right. I think the quality of the data is really exceptional from the likes of OnePoll census-wide. What I do miss, though, is that self-service, quick. And I really used to like the hookup between Google surveys and what is now Looker Studio, where you could just literally import all your data and make it pretty straight away. So that is dead, RIP. But yeah, there's some really decent market research companies out there.
Yeah, I've used to use Google consumer surveys all the time. I remember you giving a talk, I think, at Brighton SEO, and I used to follow that same strategy, which tons and tons of links. And then when it disappeared, I felt the same. Like, well, I would have used it.
Yeah.
So, Sandra, is this something that do you guys ever do kind of research or anything like that for sort of content or link building, or no? Is that not something you guys do
No,
there?
I didn't do this before, but what I did in the agency, I also, for some smaller agencies offering SEA, we also did guest blogging, which is really hard because you just have to find a guest or a possibility, but we also get a lot of traffic from there and also potential clients. So this could be also a strategy, but yeah, it's maybe more work to do than offering a survey. But I think it's a good possibility to do surveys for link building.
Yeah, like obviously if you've got a good following on social, it's fairly easy to try and get people to fill out polls and forums and so on. But yeah, it was so easy before to just set up a survey and then get that. I used to get told off all the time for leading questions as well to try and get things for headlines. Joe, is that anything that you've ever had to do before?
Yeah, I've done surveys myself, but I've done the ones with the paid survey. So I've engaged with the company and who've helped me to actually carry out it. And normally for us, we'd say 1,000 people to answer a survey. But with other marketing companies, I don't know if people see L'Oreal or saying X% of women agree that this product works. And then in small print, it says they've asked 200 people. I think if you can get 1,000, great. But yeah, if you have a really good network, it's great to try and share that with your colleagues and friends. But yeah, it really depends on what you're trying to get. But of course, also don't underestimate the fact that if you do have a big following on social and you have a lot of customers, it's always really great to ask them as well for their input.
Stacey, what was your favorite sort of stat that you ever got from something like Google Consumer Surveys, or favorite story?
One of our clients back when I was in an agency in Manchester, must be going back to about, at the time, Jeremy Clarkson was in a lot of trouble in the UK. And this client was an automotive client, and they let us, and they signed off us going to Google Consumer Surveys to ask 1,000 people to complete the sentence, Jeremy Clarkson is, with just an open-ended answer. And the leading answers I couldn't possibly repeat on a call like this, but there was plenty of use of the highly inappropriate C word and other variants. But honestly, we had such a good time putting that together. And then it was trying to get creative. How can we publish this without like publishing some of these words on the website? And we managed it, and Metro ran it and created their own little video around it. And they went a bit further than we did on our client's website, but it was just fun. Again, the market research companies I use today would just never let me do it. I don't think they'd come back from compliance, but Google surveys let me do it. So I miss it.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, next question. Looking for suggestions on ways to handle internal links. Who would like to start with this one?
I'll say something with that one.
Go for it.
For internal links, so this is the question I'm just running in the chat now. So I would first of all analyze your internal links, because we don't have much context for this. So there's many tools that you can use to analyze it. I would recommend InLinks because I was using them and they have a very good customer service. You can put up your website and they will analyze the internal links. You can select which pages you want to have, and then you can see the links going to that page. And then you can see, okay, what are those pages being talked about? So you may be able to see you should be able to actually analyze and see, have you got, first of all, enough internal linking? 2, what anchor text are you using that on? And 3, is that anchor text actually aligned with your own keywords and your keyword strategy? So I thoroughly recommend in links to use that to analyze your site, but be specific with which areas of the site, obviously, that you want to focus on. Don't do everything at once.
Great.
Maybe just to add, I would also analyze the internal linking, and you can also use Screaming Frog. It's also free when you're not a huge domain. And there you can also see potential where you already have the anchor in some text and where you can just put internal linking.
Yeah. And I think also setting process. So if you're working on a website that has lots of people producing content regularly, lots of people blogging, lots of people writing content, then once you've analyzed what you've already got and you know what you need, it's setting that process and saying, anybody who is writing on these topics, here's how to go and find relevant internal links to include, and make it predominantly about editorial. There's no point linking to a page about car finance in an article about something totally different. So I think it's just keep it relevant and make sure it makes sense, but also try and incorporate that into the process for anybody producing new content on the website.
Yeah, I think
answers.
Whenever I'm looking at internal links, I think context is really important. And sometimes when you're looking at internal links within a sentence of a blog post or a product page or something like that, it can mean something totally different. And so this is much harder to do on a large website. But one of the things I always think of is when somebody clicks that link, whatever they're landing on, does that make sense? And I think that's the only thing with using, I know a lot of people use plugins where they automatically insert internal links across the entire website, and it will be up to 3 on however many pages. But yeah, I just think that. And then the other thing I notice when I look at websites is in terms of internal links is just it can be a little bit confusing when you say have and you might link to various pages. So you look at their internal links and they've got, in fact, I was speaking to somebody this morning, and for one of their key terms, they link to the homepage, but they also link to a service page. And then I looked at their rankings and both of those pages seem to rank for various versions of the term. And I couldn't work out which one should rank for those terms. Should it be the homepage or the actual service page? So I think also, like Stacey was saying about process, thinking at the very beginning, which pages do we actually want to rank for those terms? And yeah. Anything in the chat, Joe?
Yeah, actually, Simon. Thank you, Simon. Always so interactive. Look at your anchor text for links in content, not navigation, not the navigation links. So look at the anchor text for the links, for the content, and make sure each is unique and on topic. Yes, as you were saying. I'd also want to mention that with internal linking, as we have with different aspects of SEO, it does need to be part of your overall strategy. I would encourage people to think about pillar pages and topic clusters and have that interlinking as part of that, because everything is in SEO sort of interlinked within the page. Yeah, some good tips there. Oh, we have a question actually. Any AI tool for interlinking? I don't know any AI tool for interlinking, but what I would say is that there are tools out there, like Sandra was saying, Screaming Frog, you can use it to analyze your interlinks. I was talking about inlinks, but there are also others on in the market. And you can, first of all, analyze the links and then see where you want to improve or not. I think that part of it, the analysis, is really something that perhaps AI cannot help you with. It would be about going back to your strategy. So that's it from the chat.
I think with Screaming Frog as well, you can search for particular terms and so on. So you can customize some of the settings, and if you're trying to find out where you mention certain topics and so on. Okay, so I'm going to bring 2 questions together because they're quite similar. Bear with, quite a long question as well. I meet with our SEO team at the beginning of every month. They usually go over the same topics each time. A report on our rankings, impressions, analytics, new links, and mention a few competitors. While the meeting is thorough, I find that I don't gain much insight from it. What would you recommend to make those meetings more impactful? And then the second question was, what key performance indicators should be monitored to gauge the impact of an SEO strategy? Felt like they're not too far off. Who would like to kick off on this one?
I would like to start.
Go for it.
Yeah, from my agency experience, just if I had a client who was really interested in SEO, I did something different with a client who was only interested in see the rankings and the performance. And maybe I start with the second question. So if you have key performance, it depends really on what kind of domain or website you have. Is it a shop or is it a blog or services, etc.? So first, I think it's important to define your focus keywords and then see how the ranking is going and if they go up and so on. And if you're a shop, it's also interesting to see when you get better rankings, is there also a better conversion rate and so on. And if you have a client who is really interesting in SEO, when he's, because he, in the question was that, what can I change that I get more information out of the meeting? You can also be proactive and just bring some question from the customer service within the call and just ask if we can use them, for example, for the SEO strategy in terms of blog posts or in terms of explaining better our services on the website, so in terms of the content. Yeah, this would my recommendation. And also to find out if we have the right users on our webpage. So if we optimize on keywords and then we have users, they bounce or they didn't find what they want, like for the products and so on, it could be also interesting to just check which feedback we get after the checkout. Maybe they bring it back, or they are disappointed because it's not the right thing they were looking for. So this could be really a good way to change the meeting and to get more out of these meetings.
Yeah, and I think something that Isaac just mentioned there as well, like bringing it back to objectives. Obviously, from that question, we can't see the context of who the asker is, whether it's the CEO or whether it's an external SEO team. But I think that if your SEO is being measured on inquiries, leads, then the opening thing to talk about is how have we contributed to that overall objective first. And actually, sometimes you'll deal with people who only want that. Is it working? Are we on target? And if not, what can we do differently? Whereas you'll get some people who are like, okay, yeah, give me the top level, and then give me every intricate detail of what we've tried, what's failed, what hasn't. I've got a number of clients we work with where we're working quite closely. I don't do any PPC at all, working quite closely with the ads team. So it's like, actually, I want them in the meeting. I want to know, they've got more keyword data than I have. I want to know what search queries are working well and how we're ranking for that. Whether we're finding that we're getting a different experience, like sometimes we've got keywords that we know are driving loads of SEO traffic and they convert differently than they do with the paid search, even though it's the same landing page. So I think that just running through rankings and things, I send rankings over, send traffic and impressions data over in advance. I personally find it really soul destroying to sit in meetings reading sheets at people. Like all this information they've already got. Oh, you can see the rankings, let's read numbers out. For me, it's just, this is the goal. And it's not always sales or leads. Sometimes it's newsletter signups. Sometimes it's out and out traffic, whatever it is. But to tie everything back into a goal and then really get into, because I'd be surprised if any SEO campaign is 100% on target every month. So I think it's like, we always have a habit of wanting to polish what we're doing and shine it up and, oh, look at, this is good. Shh, don't look at that bit. Don't look at that bit. Close your eyes. Those rankings are down. Don't look at that. We've got a habit of wanting to polish, but actually I think some of the most productive meetings come from sitting in and saying, this has not worked. Can we all get our heads together? And sometimes the internal team who you think are going to be the ones shouting at you can be really helpful. So I like to send over a lot of data in advance and make the meeting more of a conversation.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And also what you mentioned about if something's not working, mention it. Because I think sometimes in SEO, if something's not working, we're trying to hide it a little bit. But in terms of this question around, if this person is saying they go over the same topics each time, it's the fact that maybe the SEO team hasn't asked you, what would you like to see? As Isaac said, what does success look like for you? And what I would do as well is, I actually did a course by Tom Critchlow, the SEO MBA course. And this is really good. And it helps you to talk about SEO and sell it into the C-suite. But what it highlights was the fact that you have a top level for some of your slides, like you mentioned anyway, Stacey, and then you can go into the detail. So it's really hard when you have a meeting and there's different stakeholders in the meeting to cover everything. So I think this approach works quite well when you talk about the top level things. You actually have in the past discussed KPIs, but in actual fact, I would also raise that in the meetings, maybe every quarterly meetings, talk about these were our KPIs last quarter, or is it still what we have? And we've also, for this question, we talked about a goal, but we didn't mention about micro conversions. So a micro conversion is something like someone's actually filled in a form or they've asked for a quote. Stacey, you mentioned about signing up to a newsletter. So I think we need to add those as well to the KPIs. And I just wanted to say we have quite a few messages in the chat. Thank you everyone for contributing. Simon, you were saying that dashboards are great for clients, and I'm sure Stacey will mention that in a moment. Yes, you did. Make the first one for an overall one, and then you can go into the detail. Level of detail. John saying about dashboards are also helpful to highlight the progress. It's quite nice to see that also on a yearly basis, year on year or month on month. He was saying that the number itself might not be useful, but the change over time could be, yes. So looking at more for the long term. Isaac was also saying about what does success look for you? What do you want to achieve by doing SEO? And ask the SEO team to factor that in. KPIs for the win, as Simon says. And yeah, so that's it really for that. So there's a question about a previous question, so we'll raise that afterwards. Oh, actually, Monty just had one thing just added. The issue with the C-suite is that they don't know, they don't really have much time really, and they don't want to have a lot of detail. So it's actually important really to give like a high level, because I found with the C-suite, and Monty was saying this as well, that if you write a lot of detail, it raises more questions and it can put you on like the back foot. So it's best to keep it top level and then always try and and manage that meeting as well, so that if people are asking for the details, say we can have a call or we can have a follow-up meeting, but try and keep it so that you don't steer off the path. That's it from the chat for now.
I think if I was this person who's asked the question and I had an SEO team, so either in-house or agency, I would be thinking about what I can add to the meeting as well. So like Stacey said about getting a report beforehand, maybe if that person could go through that information beforehand and put together some good questions there or some good talking points. So rather than leaving your SEO team to come and just present because that's what they've done every month, actually turning it into more of a two-way discussion about, like you guys were saying, what's working and what's not. I think one of the things that's really important is always looking at, depends on how reporting works for you, but it could be that you have month on month and also the same month year on year, so that you've got something to compare this information with, so that you can see. I would always ask them, rather than just go through the same old stuff, maybe we could focus on what's different. So what's changed since, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And then you mentioned about competitors as well. I'd also, rather than just go through the same old competitors, I would be trying to, if there's anything new, exciting, whether it's direct competitors or whether it's search competitors or just somebody in the space that's doing some really interesting things editorially or with campaigns, I'd be asking them to maybe dive a little bit into just one or two, and not just what they're doing, but what we can replicate or and just turn this whole meeting into more of a discussion rather than just going through impressions. Because the thing is, I think all of that stuff is available. Like Simon said, you get them to create dashboards, send that to you, and if it's the same or if it's slightly improving, what's the point in spending an hour talking about that? I've been in this situation many times, and I always just try and talk it. Every time I'm asked to do a report, it turns into a discussion. I think that's the best way. Yeah, and especially if it's an agency, like you're the expert on your business, you can probably pull things together and so on that will help them.
Yeah, I'd also actually say when you're having these meetings, it's a good idea to actually maybe break down some of the issues or explain them in more detail, because what I found in meetings, especially with the C-suite, they don't want to ask questions. So I would actually explain that in the high level reports. For example, if you said that's something like impressions, right? You could actually explain what that is, or if you're finding something about no index, you could actually then put on the slide, oh, this means X, Y, and Z, so that people don't have to ask the question. Because I find that when you're not being clear and assuming that everyone knows that what it means, then people will ask you questions and it takes the focus off your presentation.
Yeah, being specific as well. I really like whenever we do reporting, even if it's just using Google Search Console, separating brand and non-brand. So rather than going, these are impressions, look, we're up. It could be that you're doing an advertising campaign, and of course you're going to be up. So it's nice to separate that stuff and then slice it a bit further where you go, okay, this particular part of the website has lost traffic or gained traffic, and these might be the reasons why. So yeah, get them to, rather than just impressions, traffic, and so on, I would definitely get them to break that up a bit more. Cool.
Yeah, we
Anything
just have one more chat really in a couple more messages in the chat. Basically, if there's any changing priorities, like we mentioned, it's about getting the info for the CEOs and marketing. They can then, if there's anything changing, you can actually present this in the meeting, and then the marketing team or the other SEOs will go in and think about how to achieve them. And also, yeah, it's just about ranking, redirect the C-suite. If they are misinformed from the past about always looking at rankings, think about other KPIs that you can be talking to the C-suite about, related to maybe revenue or micro conversions. And I just have one other thing before we move to another question. It's just about the internal linking actually that we had previously. We have Newman asking about Link Whisperer tool. Is it reliable for internal linking? And thanks, Simon, you've already come back on that one. But Sandra or Stacey, if you know about Link Whisperer tool, or anyone else in the chat, please feel free to message. I have not used it yet, but there's always opportunity, of course, to do that this week.
Great. Last thing on this question about the C-suite. If you're having a meeting every month for an hour and you're not gaining anything from it, just can the meeting. That would be my recommendation. Next question. What's a reasonable price to pay for a decent domain?
Ooh.
Anybody here bought domains? Anybody?
It depends. You can get a new domain for next to nothing, really. So I suppose like the only time I've really seen huge sums spent on domains is if a client's got a .co.uk, wants to go to the US, and somebody else owns the US and that's their brand term, in which case they'll pay what they have to pay. And that's ranged from a few $100s when it's been a single owner through to thousands. If someone's been like, oh, literally, I've had a client who operates in the UK, go out to the US, some guy had the domain, it hadn't been used for years, but he owned it. And the second that he realized they wanted it that badly, the price just went up. So I think that in most cases, unless you've got a hugely compelling reason to buy a domain from somebody, you desperately have to have this name. Just go off to whichever domain provider you're using and get it new for next to nothing. Obviously, unless you're looking at expired domains with a load of links and trying to play that game.
Yeah, I think it's taking advantage a little bit when people do that. I think that was the case ages ago when people had bought brand names before the brands actually took on, realized about the whole website, www, the World Wide Web, and people had bought them and just sat on them. I actually was trying to buy a domain for my business, and it was €4,500. So I decided not to do that, and I'll have to find another domain name instead. Simon has said I have some domains I could part with for an unreasonable price. Look at you. Are you a domain buyer back in the late 90s, early 2000s? No? Okay. John has sent a link in the chat. We'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah, that's about the latest update, and it's around expired domains and not buying them for that reason. I guess it cost of domains. What's a reasonable price? It's a bit like anything, I think. For some people it's trash, for other people it's treasure. It's sort of one of those things that if it's something that you're really set on. When it took me ages to set on our domain, we were called something else before, and I came up with good signals. I sat on the idea of us being called that for about a year. I got in contact with the person that owned the domain and all that kind of stuff. And I went through the process of actually getting the trademark before I bought the domain, because I just wanted to make sure that if I was going to spend a load of money on it, it would work. I've bought domains, did that particular one. I think we paid about $9,000 for it, something like that. But I figured I'm going to be doing this for at least another 10 years, 15 years, whatever. So for me, it was, but that wasn't for SEO. That was a branding decision. It was like, I wanted my business to be called that. And so I think this is where you need to think is if it's a branding decision, then you need to play it out by what am I about? What do I want to be called? And that sort of stuff. I have bought other domains that are a sort of perfect match and all of that stuff and spent a bit on those. But yeah, if I was to go back and buy it, I'd only ever spend a lot of money based on brand.
Interesting.
I could turn it into.
We have actually a question in the chat about domains. So Isaac's asking, what do you guys think would be better? Having a domain with .io, .info in order to have a powerful keyword, or would you prefer to have a different name with a .com? So io.io.info or .com.
Yeah, personal preference. I just like a .com. I don't mind a .io. I don't know what it is. I really don't like .info, and I think it's because every time I've seen a .info site, it's just like a spam fest. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I think it's personal preference. And again, what the purpose of the powerful keyword is? A powerful keyword happens to also be a brand.
Yeah.
For me, it's just I just like a .com.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I agree. I would say a powerful keyword doesn't make a change. So if it's your brand, then maybe you can think about it. But yeah, I would also prefer the .com.
Great. Okay. Next question is, my meta description is showing text that isn't even on the page. It's nothing to do with what we do. It looks like we've been hacked. What do I need to do to fix this? Has this happened to anybody here?
Not with content that's not on the page. So I mean, I often see that what gets shown in the results obviously would depend on what the user's typed in as a query.
Yeah.
But it might not be what I've put in as my meta description myself, but it's come from the page somewhere. So I don't think I've seen anything that looks like total spam relating to my domain like that.
I had my site hacked, unfortunately, and yes, there was a description that was being pulled in from the code that someone had put in, that had hacked it and put above the fold. So that was down to the hosting provider. There was basically a hole they managed to hack into. So I would actually check with your hosting provider. And what I did as well is I checked to see this text was hidden. It was, if I disabled JavaScript, then I found it. So I would check that, but also check in your code too, and check with your hosting provider if there have been any hacks, just to offset that, to discard that. And if not, then I would need to analyze the rest of the content, but it's hard to provide more of a detailed answer without knowing the exact context or the site itself. Sandra, looks like you want to add to that.
No, I totally agree, because maybe it could be something with the anchor, but if it's nothing with the service, then I would say it's a different problem.
Yeah, I would just check the source code of the page, and because it must be there somewhere. So check that, and that'll often show you where that's been inserted. And if you have been hacked, I would try and work out when that happened and get your server to roll back to just before then. Yeah. And then update all your security and stuff like that. But yeah, that does actually sound really serious. So I'm glad we got onto that question.
Yeah, just a couple of things in the chat. Yeah, John was saying it sounds like it's been hacked. Simon saying move off WordPress. Deepak saying check the recent modified file in the hosting panel and see the code. And check, someone saying check the source code with the browser inspector. So yeah, I hope those tips have helped. And before we go to our next question, I also wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us that's not live. And if you are enjoying the SEO office hours and you do want to join us live, then sign up to Good Signals /SEO-office hours. The link is in the chat and also in the description. And if you like, I'm sure you are enjoying SEO's office hours, click on and subscribe to the Good Signals YouTube channel. Oh, and one other note from Chris, actually, back to the hacking. He's saying, I'm sure you have SSL set up, but see if you can move it to a TLS to help with the man in the middle hack. So lots of advice here. So I hope that's helped. Thank you everyone for your input.
Great. Okay, so this question, I'm going to try and read it. Okay. To blog, to send newsletters, to podcasts, to tweet, etc., to run events, to publish ebooks, is that still a thing? To comment on blogs or participate in forums, is that also still a thing? To contact other website owners, to redesign and relaunch our website, or just copy the biggest competitors? Essentially, which of these or other ideas will help us acquire more customers? Who would like to kick off?
I don't mind starting with that one.
Go for it, Stacey.
Phenomenally broad question. I guess for customer acquisition, I can't think of a single example where commenting on someone's blog has helped. But at the same time, I've got a client that's, again, in automotive and quite niche automotive classic cars. Actually, some of their team are really active on some very specific forums, which does drive for them. It's not an SEO activity. It's just what they do as part of their sales team. They're driving in inquiries. I think having regular newsletters again, it depends very much what you're doing and what your goals are. If you've got regular newsletters that are offering discounts, exclusive products in advance, I've seen that work really effectively. Ebooks, and I guess it depends why. Again, we've done that. So we'll have a guide, some sort of ebook, and people are signing up with an email to receive it, and then they're on an email newsletter list and can be targeted later. So these things can all work to achieve certain things, but I guess it just depends entirely on objectives. For new customer acquisition, thinking of it purely and simply from an SEO perspective, if I was starting at the beginning, I'd be keyword strategy. Who are my audience? How are they searching when they're ready to buy? How are they searching in the weeks before they're ready to buy? And how are they searching when they have a problem that I can solve, but they don't know they need to buy me yet? And so actually getting into who your audience are, what they're searching online, where they're active online, sounds like the thing to do before starting to think about specific tactics.
Amazing.
I agree with that. Sorry. I agree with that. And I think you also has to check if there's already a podcast or several podcasts for the same topic, because then when you start a new podcast, it will be hard to get someone to listen to you. And also if you think about a keyword strategy, it could be a thing to do a blog posting or a blog to get the customer in the upper funnel or to strengthen your brand, but it really depends on which market you're located in. So I think it depends really on what you're offering and how is the market already.
Yeah, I think with this one, we need to come back to what is your marketing strategy, and it links back to what is the goals of the company, and then align that. It has to be all aligned together. So in terms of, to blog or send newsletters and podcasts and tweet, that needs to be part of your strategy. Do you have the resources in hand? Can you do a content calendar to divide up that work? Do you have the capacity to do that? We didn't also mention events in here. It really needs to be down to how much resource you can dedicate. If you don't have the resource, can you bring in more to help you with that? We also have a quote from John, a chat from him saying that in his opinion, diversifying your traffic sources is critical. So building regular audience with a newsletter, that's a great safeguard against any external traffic sources changing, like search ranking or social feeds. A regular newsletter audience means that you have to constantly provide something of value to users, not just doing a one-time hack for SEO. And another thing that wasn't actually mentioned in the question that was asked was around communities. We've seen a big growth of communities as well, but for specific niches. I mentioned last week about women in tech SEO, but of course, there's many other, that's more for supporting people that are in search marketing. But of course, if you're actually selling a product or service and you do have a certain community, whether it's maybe fintech or whether it's SaaS, that could also help you to nurture clients, or it could also be a lead as well. The same with events. I wanted to say, thank you everyone for your comments in here. So thank you, John, for yours. And Monsu was just mentioning as well in terms of back to the question about so we go back to the question, which of these will help us acquire more customers? So Monsu's saying the main issue she's found is the lack of communication or internal visibility, as well as the lack of prestige that SEOs and SEOs tend to have. So again, I think it comes back to, okay, what's your strategy? So what's the goals of the business? How does your marketing strategy align with that? And how does your SEO fit within that? And thank you, Chris. You've been mentioning a couple of things in the chat. So define the audience and find the way to create ports along the river of the customer journey. I like that. The river of the customer journey. And Simon's mentioning about build a brand. That's never a waste of time. So a lot of chat in the chat. Mike, over to you.
Great. Yeah, I think with this question, you need to be really careful that you don't try and do too much at once and do everything badly. My preference with how we do things is every quarter we might try something new and try and build like a habit and really focus on that and try and get it right and then move on to something else. And each time we try and do something, I try and think what's like the consistent value, or what's the unique thing that this channel or whatever we're doing is going to offer. So like repurposing is also fine on other channels and that sort of thing. But say, for instance, you do start a podcast, trying to really focus on that, make it really good, test and all of that stuff before doing a podcast, a blog, a newsletter, all of those things at once. And don't just send the same thing on all of those channels, because why would somebody sign up to your newsletter as well as sign up to your podcast if it's just the same stuff? That's my 2 cents on it. But yeah, be careful not to do lots of things badly, because that does the opposite to what Simon says, and I think that damages your brand. Okay, next question. We're finding that our pitches are being rejected by websites. They typically respond with, "We don't link out." However, from a quick browse of their website using a tool, it's obvious that they accept posts from random questionable websites, potentially paid. What are we doing wrong? And why don't they accept our pitches?
The first thing I would say is, if you're pitching websites that are taking content that looks spammy and paid, then don't pitch those websites. They're probably not websites you're going to want to be on if you can see at first glance the content that they're linking out on just looks poor, then I would probably avoid them anyway. So for me, if I'm looking at websites to pitch in a bid to cover content or something, I don't do much cold outreach these days, but I'm generally thinking more about, okay, I'm not all that asked about domain authority or domain rate, whichever of these third-party metrics that we're looking at now, because everything's relative. So I've got a client in a very niche industrial area, and the biggest publication in their space, the one that's read by everybody in their space, is teeny tiny in the context of the internet. So if you're like, look at this link that we won, in SEO context, you'd be like, that is crap. It's the biggest publication in their space. It's driving traffic in the form of people who are in their space. I think you need to pitch websites based on where your audience is at and on looking at them. I'm a big fan of like websites that are in Google News, they're publishing regularly, they get talked about online. You trust the people talking about them and worry about these domain metrics less later. For me, the big question would be, if you're pitching websites that look like they're publishing crap, then just why stop pitching them and pitch better websites?
Amazing answer. Does anybody else have anything to add? No, I don't either.
I just wanted to say, no, go on, Sandra. No, go on, please.
Maybe just to be individual in your pitches and just check really the domain or the website, and not only if they have the possibility to give you a guest blog, more in what can they be interested in, and be individual in your pitch emails.
Yeah, I think if we take a step back and look at, okay, why would you want to be pitching for the website, despite the fact this one has some spammy links coming out? It's about aligning your brand or your company with that website, make sure that it's relevant. And I would also find out what were the good articles that you liked on that site. And then when you pitched your article or your study, your survey, whichever it is, your piece of content, then I would actually refer to what they had done in the past. So it looks like you've tailor-making your email to them. And also play around with your titles as well. Make sure it's a catchy title, because everyone, we all know, doesn't have time to read emails. Sometimes you can misread them as well. So make sure that it's really catchy and it stands out, to then at least have people then click through. And if you don't get a response, maybe follow up at least a couple of times, no more than that, because maybe you look a bit desperate, and just maybe you could switch the email header, the subject header. So I would actually, first of all, align your brand with that website, do those personal emails by looking and seeing what that content is. And then if it's not working, then follow up a couple of times after that.
Great, perfect. I'm going to get a few because I can see that we're running out of time.
We are, and this is our last SEO office hours for a couple of weeks, because we will not be here next Friday because it's Easter Friday in some countries.
Ah, I didn't even know that. That's good to know. I've been sitting here on my own. That is really good. Okay.
No, not a break. Yes, sorry, John. We'll be back though.
We will be back. Promise we'll be back.
It's just a holiday. We're going on holidays, but not really. But
okay, the SEO world feels like a maze to me. Over the past year, the amount of people on our website has been gradually dropping. We've enhanced the sites aesthetically, expanded inventory, and ramped up our blogging efforts, and yet the decline still persists. I've reached out to a few companies for their initial assessments, and each has suggested different solutions. How can I figure out which one to go with? That was not where I was thinking that was going to go. Cool. So multiple SEO experts, I guess, agencies have given some advice, and it's different advice. If you're a business owner or head of marketing or something, how do you know who to trust?
Yeah, that's tricky, because I think that without knowing what different solutions they've suggested, or it's very possible that you could have 4 different solutions and they're all right. There's all these ways to do it. But I think that for me, I would be suggesting that if the companies that you've spoken to all have different solutions, case studies, ask for case studies specific to, have you turned this kind of thing around before? Ask for a bit of understanding as to why they think this is the problem. So if someone's come at you and said, oh, it's because you don't have enough links, compared to what? How do you know this? Or they say, you're not blogging enough. We're blogging about what? They've said that they've done a load of blogging, but that sounds like they could be doing content for content's sake, as it were. So I think it's, why do you think this is the solution? Ask them for some real data behind it. But then ultimately, when it comes to trusting SEOs, I think it's got to be, show me some case studies. Maybe you could speak to some of their existing clients. If they're prepared to give you some information about people they've worked with before and have a chat with them. It's really difficult. I'd just say base it on results. Personal referrals are always handy. And if they're happy to let you speak to some clients who've been in similar situations to you before, then it's going to be helpful. It's difficult. Like I said, you could have 4 different solutions pitched and they might all be okay, might all be fine, but equally conflict with each other. So it is tricky.
Great answer.
Maybe it could be also interesting to see, when they give you an advice, what they hope to get from this optimization step. So just to see a overall strategy, and not to say, okay, we fix this and then everything is okay. So more like to see, when we do this part of your website, then we get out of this solution, and so that we have a more clear strategy, and could be also for more transparency.
Yeah, those are some good answers. I would also say, regarding, so back to the question is, we've seen the traffic drop. I know that you've reached out to companies for initial assessment, but also become familiar with your own data. So look at Google Search Console and see how that's changed over the past 16 months. Have you seen a drop in brand queries, non-brand queries? Have you seen a drop in impressions versus clicks? What about the overall rankings as well? You can see. And also look and see about referrals too. Like, have you actually got increase or not? Because it doesn't say anything about SEO or organic traffic here. And then in terms of what the company has come back with, they may have come back with different solutions, because depending on what budget it is, but it would be best for them to align with your strategy. What are you looking to do for your website? Do you want to actually focus on content, like Stacey mentioned? Do you actually want to focus on maybe creating assets, like you've done a survey and then it's a really good survey that you want people to link into and then drive traffic that way? Or do you have some technical issues that need to be resolved? So I would say, give the agency or the companies you're asking a bit more of a brief, be really clear with budget and what you're looking for, and then they can come back. And like Stacey mentioned, get referrals or speak to their clients and see their results too. And we have a lot of messages in the chat as well. Yeah, some people don't like to share their clients, which is totally fine. But anything I can mentor any client, I make sure I can explain what and why. Yeah, sometimes you're not able to share past case studies, which is fine. Stacey, you've already come back on that one. It's great. Yeah, also, sometimes traffic drops every now and then. Sometimes it's down to what's happening in the market. As Chris also asked, has the drop been relative traffic? Yeah, because sometimes it's due to seasonality. So really know your data, get to grips with Google Search Console and understand that well. And if you don't know it, then you could ask your company to, please, can you train me on Google Search Console and let me know that, because without data, you're just another person with an opinion. One other comment from Simon: each website's unique. The client needs to let the agency or freelancer spend time with the site to understand it. There's never just one quick answer. And also just reading a few things in the chat about how I said that we're not having SEO off hours next week. So it's just, yes, 1 week break, but we will be back and we are going to continue running it.
I am quite enjoying reading the chat on that. I think what's quite interesting about SEO office hours is it's one of those things that, because we have obviously 4 SEOs right now speaking on the call, plus loads of others, there's never one answer to things. And so it's not necessarily that both agencies are wrong. It could be that they're both right, but have a different approach. I obviously run an agency, and I would be fine with you saying to the other agency what I've suggested, and vice versa, and then seeing what, if there's one that happens to go, actually, yeah, we're going to change our plan and do that, then I'd probably go with the other one. But if they say, well, that is one way of doing it, but the reason we've picked this way is because of this, or we could do that if you wanted as well, then that's probably an indication. So I think I would just be quite transparent about it, and just say, look, we reached out to a few different agencies, and just be honest, I'm really confused, don't know who to go with. So you don't necessarily need to share the deck or anything, but you could just share, like, outline what they've suggested. Great. Okay, so we've got, I think, so we've got 4 minutes, so we'll just to the last regular question. I think that makes sense. By the way, somebody did send us a question, which was just chat GPT prompts. It's going to need to be more specific than that. So that's not a regular question. The regular question is, what are you most excited about at the moment in terms of SEO? Sandra, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment?
Yeah, I'm really excited because, as mentioned, I'm starting a mentorship next week or next month, starting in April, as mentor in the Women in Tech SEO. So this is personally my most excited thing in SEO at the moment.
Great, awesome. How did you become involved in something like that? Did you reach out to them, or?
Yeah, actually, I get to know the community on LinkedIn, and there's a huge Slack channel, and then there was a open candidature for becoming a mentor or mentee, and yeah, that's it.
Great.
Yeah, you have to be part of the community, to then be part of it, and then you submit that you'd like to be in, that you're interested in being a mentor or mentee, and then you are matched. It's a 6th cohort this year.
Stacey, what are you most excited about in terms of SEO at the moment?
I think I like a bit of change. I know it's all a bit unsettling sometimes, but I think that what we're seeing at the moment is people who are newer to the industry. So I've been doing SEO since 2008. And I think that people who are newer to the industry don't have that background now of years of go buy links and just throw keywords in content. So I think what we're seeing happen is more rounded marketers doing SEO. And I think marketing actually is gradually becoming a really credible marketing channel. So instead of talking about keywords, we're talking about audience intention and things like that, which I think is great. I do think that, like, it's just reading Simon's comment about the old fogies. The old fogies are great. But I think that it just feels like it's becoming quite credible. You're able to go into meetings with other sort of providers now and other channels, and actually SEO's got a lot of insight that it can add. So it feels less like a standalone thing these days and more kind of a part of the overall marketing piece.
Great. What about you, Joe? What are you most excited about in terms of SEO?
Actually, I'm excited about the growth in communities and the support out there. Yes, we talked about the mentorship in Women in Tech SEO, and I think mentorship is really important. It was never really around, I think, when I first started in SEO, and I think that was lacking. And I'm glad to see there's more of that. I'm also really excited about everyone coming onto SEO office hours, people taking their time to also be our guests and attendees. Today was Sandra's first panel in an SEO environment, and also her first panel in English. So thank you very much, Sandra, for joining us today. And thank you very much, Stacey, for being on the show with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. So I think we're at that point where we should say goodbye. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody else who was on the call.
Thank you.
And for all your comments. Have an amazing weekend, and see you in 2 weeks. Joe, 2 weeks? Cool.
2 weeks. We'll be back.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.